Take two. Hopefully this goes through. Sync with the audio. Kyle here from All Media Reviews. Little food for thought topic of this video. I'm not ready to do the Empire 2009, and I am working on. I'm doing some research on replacing my camcorder. This is from 2014, so I got 10 years out of it, but I may have to finance or something. I don't know, because either if I buy it used, if I buy it new, a lot of the camcorders $500 to $700 potentially. You know, if I was financing it, like whatever, it'd be like six, 700, 70, $80 a month maybe. I don't know, for 6 months. Anyway, but the topic of the day of this video I was thinking about because um there's a new Jeff Buckley documentary that just screened at Sundance. Um, that that what's it called? That something. It's called oh geez, because there's been a lot of documentaries. It's never over Jeff Buckley. And what I saw some posts. It was screened at Sundance. It mentions and talks about Brad Pitt, who's a really big Jeff Buckley fan, wanting to portray him in a biopic in like the year 2000. He even like invited Jeff Buckley's mother, Mary Bear, to dinner and all this stuff, but she wasn't really on board with him doing it. So it never got made. There was one Jeff Buckley movie that came out about 10 years ago, called Greetings from Tim Buckley, which was more about Tim. Actually, was like doing homage to him, but it wasn't played by Brad Pitt. But it talks about that. I'm wondering if it talks about some of the other stuff. So that's the thing I was going to get into. Is this topic is not like people, actors slash musicians, or musicians with some acting potential, to play different people, like musical people, musicians, singers, etc., in their life story. So Jeff Buckley's the obvious one. It's been talked about for ages. It seems like the estate and his fans have wanted it. And yeah, I mean, Brad Pitt, he has some influence and obviously puts money toward it because he's a big fan of Jeff's. Um, but I don't know if he would have. I mean, even if the part of the thing is, if you're going to do it, can the music be done by other people, or they just overdub Jeff's voice? I don't know. I don't really love that idea. They did that, I think, with a little bit with the Queen movie, but Bohemian Rhapsody. But so there was an actor that I saw in a movie called Exploding Girl. It was like 2013. I think it was with Zoe Kazan and some other people. Go back to see it. It was a good movie. His name was Mark Rendall, Rendal, and someone had posted back then when there was a message board on imdb.com, because all that stuff's like archive, like a photo shot of like the two of them, and I've seen him in Exploding Girl. He looks a lot like Jeff. He looked. And I looked it up. Mark Rendall was born in like 88 or something. So at the time, that was like 10 years ago, he was like in his late 20s. It would have been the perfect age. And he does some music in that movie, Exploding Girl. Anyway, certainly because he looks so much like, did a side-by-side comparison of pictures of Jeff Buckley and Mark Rendall. It's like almost a slam dunk. But I mean, it didn't happen, obviously. I don't know if anyone approached Mark about that. Mark Rendall. He's done some other acting. He was in the Apprentice, even like the Celebrity Apprentice. Looking at him now, though, his hair's like reddish, and they could dye it, but he's probably too old now because he's getting close to, he's in his late 30s. Um, so then there's some talk about, like, there's a musician named Reeve Carney who might have done some acting, but he's more of a musician who has a really good voice, who could do it. There's been hope for him. He could maybe potentially play him. But then from a musical standpoint, the likes of Dave Vives. Dave Vives is probably close to the right age. He might be a little bit old, but the music, specifically, you listen to him on that Childish Japes album from 2018. He sounds so much, but in a good way, like Jeff Buckley. Then of course there's Scott Mathews, but Scott Mathews is probably about the same age as Mark Rendall, or maybe even older. I'm not sure how old Reeve Carney, because maybe 10, 15 years ago, there was rumors about James Franco. It was kind of peak James Franco, but he's been kind of canceled, unfortunately. So even if they were going to do a movie, and they were thinking about him. I don't think they would cast him just for everything that's happened with him. Robert Pattinson, he's maybe still about he could still do it based on his age, but I have no interest in him doing Jeff Buckley. And he's doing the Batman stuff anyways. I don't know if he had time. And then Penn Badgley, who did portray him in Greetings from Tim Buckley, but I thought he was disappointing. He was in like Gossip Girl and some other stuff, so maybe been Penny Dreadful also. Anyway, that's kind of my take on the Jeff Buckley. This documentary might it's got a lot of like not never before seen footage or interviews, that kind of stuff that archive stuff that that's why the state was okay. That's kind of the biggest controversy or issue a lot of fans have with everything that Mary Guibert, Jeff's mother, has sort of stranglehold and controlled so much about what's gone on with him and what she's been okay to release, and releasing so much stuff that maybe Jeff wouldn't have wanted. It's kind of like the Prince thing, but anyway. So there's a few others that I've thought about and rumored and that kind of stuff. So like, I mean, the history of this stuff is, I'll just go over the history. Like, you had Gary Busey playing Buddy Holly, that works somewhat. Joaquin Phoenix won an Academy Award for playing Johnny Cash, of course, and I Walk the Line. Rami Malek, I think, also won an Academy Award for playing Freddie Mercury in Bohemian Rhapsody. As much as they took liberties on the true events and the chronology of things, something in me and a lot of fans just love seeing him portray him. He captured a lot of what the essence and the spirit of Freddie, that I thought it really worked. It was really a really good performance by him. Even though there was a lot of rumor for years it was going to be Sacha Baron Cohen, but the estate never really fully liked the approach. Sacha Baron Cohen was going to make it more about the drugs and that kind of stuff, his drug abuse. But also Sacha Baron Cohen's like 6'3" or 6'4", and Freddie Mercury was like 5'7". So I don't know, that would have been weird with the camera size. Lou Diamond Phillips, of course, played Richie Valens, and that was pretty memorable. I'd never heard of Lou Diamond Phillips before that, and of course, in that case, they had Los Lobos do the music, so they could find a way with some of these actors that don't necessarily have the musical chops to play these people to act that might look like them, like Mark Rendall. Maybe Mark Rendall's voice wouldn't work like Jeff's, but he looks like it. I don't know, but that was a good example where it did work somewhat. Andre 3000 played Jimi Hendrix in a movie. I don't know, that was like 7 or 8 years ago. Never saw it. It wasn't that memorable. Forrest Whitaker played Charlie Parker in Bird. That was okay. I thought that it was kind of more like, again, tragic story, the Hollywood sort of thing. And Charlie Parker died at a young age anyways. Don Cheadle as Miles Davis, another one which looked sort of interesting when it got hyped up, but then ultimately people haven't talked about it. Talking about him having a gun and all this stuff and willing to shoot someone, but Social Music. It's not really jazz. I won't call it jazz. I remember that was the line in the trailer. Jamie Foxx as Ray Charles, of course. He won the Academy Award, and I've seen some of that, and he was pretty good in that. So that was a pretty good casting. Renee Zellweger recently as Judy Garland. She got an Academy Award. I love The Wizard of Oz and Judy Garland, my favorite songs, Over the Rainbow, but never saw it. I don't know. Again, it was more of a dark, dramatic story rather than celebrating sort of the greatness of Judy Garland, but that was kind of maybe trying to make it as true because Judy Garland was depressed. Chadwick Boseman as James Brown was okay. Ultimately, he's going to be remembered for some other things. Unfortunately, he's not around anymore, but he was decent. I would say he was probably better in that role than he maybe was as Jackie Robinson, which is like, oh, I'm just going to do biopic after biopic, and he'd probably feel like he's getting typecast. Jennifer Hudson as Aretha Franklin. I thought she was pretty good. Again, it hasn't really been talked about since. That was like, I want to say 3 years ago, so it was still recently. And of course, the Paul Dano / John Cusack portrayal of Brian Wilson on, was it Love and Mercy, which was pretty damn good. Paul Giamatti was really dark as Brian, the sort of controlling asshole manager, but John Cusack as him, though, it doesn't look anything like Brian Wilson, somehow captured Brian Wilson totally. And Paul Dano was decent. He was okay. He was not amazing, but he was good. He looks more like Brian Wilson when he was doing the younger version. So the other ones that besides the Jeff Buckley thing, which any of these people, there could be someone else, if there were to happen, whether it be Reeve Carney or Mark Rendall or someone else. Um, this actor that he's retired, so the odds are like minuscule to, and he's probably now too old. This is a gentleman named Daniel Letterle, which he only was in Hollywood for 4 or 5 years, but I saw him in a movie, an independent film, which got an award, I think, a few awards, called Camp. It came out in 2003. I want to say like most people saw it in like 2004, 2005, but he looked a fair amount like Kevin Gilbert, and in that movie, he's actually got a guitar. He's playing music. Um, the movie Camp was a movie these kids at a camp, like high school kids, or I remember about it for the most part. It was that memorable movie. But Anna Kendrick, who that was way before she got well known for like Up in the Air and the whatever it is, music and lyrics series or whatever. Um, yeah, I mean, he looked a fair amount like him, but at the time I saw it, I probably just was becoming familiar with Kevin because that was 2004, 2005, 2006. But I just did a little research the other day and I just like noticed that Daniel Letterle did like 2 or 3 other movies. And like I may have done some theater, but that was basically it. He's now retired. He's like doing carpenter or something anyway. He doesn't live anywhere near Hollywood, so but the other one that I doubt it would happen at this point, and there's some other issues with it besides, but from a physical standpoint, the way he looks, his face, his facial features, and he's probably still about the right age. Austin Butler, who I don't think he won, but he got nominated for the Elvis movie playing Elvis. And he's like, I don't know, he's Kevin Gilbert, from what I understand, was maybe like about my height. He's like 5'8", 5'9". He wasn't that tall. He wasn't like super, but you saw him. I know how tall Nick DiVirgilio is, and he was a few inches taller than Nick. I think Austin Butler's over 6 feet, so this would be a little bit like the Sacha Baron Cohen Freddie Mercury thing. But beyond that, of course, the fact he just played Elvis, why would he want to do another again like Chadwick Boseman do biopic after biopic, especially as a musician? But discover Kevin's music. But the odds of a Kevin Gilbert biopic are pretty minuscule. The Jeff Buckley could happen potentially still, I suppose. I think the best chance of Kevin Gilbert being portrayed in Hollywood by anyone are if there ever happens to be like a Sheryl Crow biopic. Or maybe there's a thing with Patrick Leonard, but Sheryl Crow would be the obvious if and I don't know when it would be because the controversy behind her. But I don't know if her or her estate would ever okay it. But she's being kind of like letting things go a little bit more, like she has a little bit in the last few years. They even talked about Toy Matinee and Kevin in that documentary a couple of years ago. That would be the best shot of Kevin Gilbert showing up in a movie, unless they were doing like a Michael Jackson biopic and they had one the engineer Madonna biopic. Anyway, but again, Austin, there are probably some other actors I'm not thinking of, but Austin Butler or Daniel Letterle, the only thing too that I could think that I know of that I've seen. But so a couple other rumored ones, which are probably remote at best of happening at this point. One of them is because he's just way too old. Obviously, that's the age thing. Is just caught up with it. Is a Keith Moon, or if they did the Who biopic, or a Keith Moon biopic, because I could see that his lifestyle would lend to the Hollywood biopic being made, because biopics seem to be a common thing and they sell. Mike Myers, I don't know if it was rumored or he even was quoted as saying he would enjoy portraying Keith Moon of the Who, but he's too old. Mike Myers has got to be in his 60s now, so. And Keith Moon died probably at the age of 35, something like that. He was 35 or late 30s, so have to find someone else. And then the other one that was rumored, which potentially could happen given that he did live a longer time, but he'd have to play, and he's played weird characters. If they did a Syd Barrett biopic, which I could see that happening at some point too. They've done a few documentaries. There's one was it last year before, and I never got around to seeing it, but Johnny Depp, I think was quoted as saying he'd like to play Syd Barrett. He could do it, or the thing is, given Johnny Depp again is like probably around the same age as Mike Myers, he might be a little bit younger, but if Johnny Depp played Syd Barrett, maybe he could play an older version, the one who's sort of brain damaged, unfortunately. Um, who they get to play the younger one, I don't know. But I know that Johnny Depp was with he was so like Mike Myers and him have both done music, especially Johnny Depp. He played with the Hollywood Vampires, I want to say. So he's had experience playing music, so it wouldn't be that weird for him. So another one that the clock isn't ticking entirely because he has the physical attributes probably within the next at least we still probably have a window of 10 or more years, I'd say, is the actor Freddie Highmore, the British actor, who'd been known. He's known now. I don't know if I haven't watched the show, but he's been on that ABC show, The Good Doctor, for a few years now. Then he was in the Bates Motel show, the prequel to Psycho story with Norman Bates and the Bates family. And then, of course, among some other things, he was in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory as Charlie, the remake that was just awful with Johnny Depp. And then Finding Neverland with Kate Winslet and Johnny Depp. So the connections with Johnny Depp in some of this stuff. But Freddie Highmore looks, especially since I've noticed since The Good Doctor, seen clips and pictures of him, and even before that, like Peter Gabriel. Again, and Gabriel's life story would definitely warrant, while it's not super dramatic, there was drama. You'd have to have some other members. I could see it being similar to the Bohemian Rhapsody thing. Of course, Queen is a little bit bigger selling name than Genesis, but I think it would warrant it. Genesis are a well-known commodity, especially the 80s Genesis. So they'd have to cast the other members of Genesis too as well. They could do that. But the biggest one would be if they could get now I don't know if Freddie Highmore's ever done any singing I can think of, or music, that kind of thing. But even you could do his time with Genesis. You could do his time after Genesis. You know, in his early part of his career, the sort of stuff with the social activism stuff. He his real forming real world records and all that stuff. How much drama? The drama is in sort of in his involvement, not his life so much, but the involvement in real world. I don't know. Hollywood likes to make things so dramatized, hence Bohemian Rhapsody. But you could even do a little bit of drama with him and in the 80s Genesis, where there was sort of a rivalry of sorts. I don't think it was fully intended, but Gabriel's getting hits, then Phil Collins is going slow and getting hits, and then there's Genesis, like 86, you had So and Invisible Touch come out. I don't know how, it was within about a few months of each other in 86, but yeah, I guess that I think that would be, again, there could be someone else, but if Freddie Highmore, they could get someone else to do the vocals, they'd overdub him like in Bohemian Rhapsody. I think he would be an obvious get if they could do it, if he'd want to do it. So you kind of look like Peter Gabriel. Would you want to play him in a movie? But you need someone writing a screenplay and has to get greenlit and all that process. But he's got to be mid-20s, late 20s now. So he would have, I could say, up till about the age of 40. I mean, he could play the later Gabriel too, I suppose. But I would really want at least the early part of his solo career, mostly up into, Us. And so I think there's at least a window of time for that if it potentially could happen. I don't know. And another one that sort of I've known about for years, and it's minuscule. The chances of a Kevin Gilbert movie is almost more likely. Is Janis Joplin? There's never been a biopic about her, but Ellen Muth, either a biopic or just being portrayed. Ellen Muth, who was the lead in Dead Like Me, who, as far as I know, did very little else because I don't think she liked the Hollywood lifestyle. But let's just say she was a fan of something, or something really changed her mind. She's a little older now. The problem is she's probably too old again. Yeah, she probably is a little too old now. But I mean, the last thing I know that she did was that Dead Like Me revive like reunion movie, which is like 2008 or something like that. It was like 6 or 7 years after the original show ended. They only did two seasons. I love that show, but she, I mean, there's probably some other actors you might be able to get to play Janis Joplin. I'm surprised there hasn't been a Janis Joplin biopic, or they could have someone portray her in like a thing about 60s early rock, like not early rock and roll, but like 60s rock and roll. Even I think she might have been at Woodstock. what's anyway, they did like a portrayal of that, they could have someone play her. There probably has been, but Ellen Muth, kind of, I've seen her enough in Dead Like Me. It's like she could play Janice. So that's my list. I mean, there's probably several other examples of people. There was one actor that looked a lot like Mick Jagger that I saw in some independent film years ago. But it was like in the 90s. He looked like a younger Mick Jagger, though, again, you could sort of translate it, but there's other examples of actors that could potentially play certain musicians in biopics or stories about a band portrayed in Hollywood, or just sort of events of some kind portrayed. But I'm not talking about the yacht rock, although yeah, Michael McDonald he could get. Who is the actor? James Brolin's too old now. He's even still around. I'm not sure if he is. But anyway, that's about it. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.